Part 1. Yeah, everybody is stupid and has horrible taste, and they're too lazy to put money in an envelope. It was a neighborhood full of empty trailers, and then I figured, Onion Town is a dead end, and the man down the street, his face was covered in intrigue and dark black canker sores. The dishes were dirty as the colliers, and it was time for adventure, intrigue, and excitement. Here in Onion Town? Of course, the mail. So I write to Nicolas Sequeira at 1424 Columbine Street No. 1 in the idyllic almost heavenly suburb of Denver, Colorado, and then I had heard the rumors, you know. How couldn't I have? Don't send in for these comics. And yet I was bored out of my head in this broken neighborhood, so I sent in my money. The envelope came back a day later. I opened it up. It was empty, no comics. I should have known. Everybody said it was scam. No wait, there was a leg sticking out, a little blood on the flap and a leg sticking out, the leg protruded even further, and now good lord, a whole hand ripped from the envelope, and now a face full of teeth. A somewhat angelic face. It was a nude fellow with no clothes on, and he came from the envelope and asked me if I wanted to play a game of cribbage, and I said no, you just came out of my envelope, and even then we don't have cribbage in Onion Town. This fellow was nude. Now he shapeshifts into Pennywise, the scary clown, with red makeup, and his eyes looked like Fred Flintstone's. Each eye looked like Fred Flintstone, and his hands was named Georg and Bill. And he says, please float my paper boat. I said okay and reached for his balloon, but he bites my arm, and then he laughed and said pranked you bro, and then he gave me the Nicolas comics, and now I'm in the hospital and I'm missing an arm, but at least I got my comic. If you want the Nicolas comics, don't write for it. It's not worth the hassle because a nude fellow will pop from the envelope and then turn into Pennywise the dancing clown. He's called that because he whizzes on you after he kills you. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Okay, bye. Okay, wait, that was too short, so I need to give you a bit more info about Nicolas comics. Basically the comic which Pennywise gave me is College Buddies, which is stick figure with dumb joke, and it sucks. And I know that you asked where Onion Town is. The answer is it's a suburb of Seattle, and I smell like carrots now that Pennywise has gripped my flesh. Also, in case you're wondering if I'm going to sue the demon clown, I'm not going to, because in retrospect it was a pretty dope prank, but I still think Nicolas comics is rather sketch, and if a nude fellow come out of your envelope it could be Pennywise, but it's probably not. So thanks for listening to this story. I swore it was really happened to me, and remember, do not write for Nicolas comics.
So I just read the entire book of It, and I figured I'd start off the whole October Spook Fest with a mildly thorough analysis of the Pennywise phenomenon that we all know and love. So, I read the whole book, whole thing, start to finish, and everyone will say, it is way too long. You know, it's over 1,000 pages, but it's so good. I finished it in under a week. I mean, it's an easy read. And again, Stephen King is just one of those authors you gotta read all of it, or it's not worth it. I think Stephen King is definitely probably the best author out there today. I mean, it's very rare that an author can just bring together everyone from 1976 all the way to 2019. By gosh, you know. Now, about the It remake. Like I said, I consider the last good Stephen King remake that you absolutely have to see to be The Green Mile with Tom Hanks. It was over a decade ago. The new movie is probably pretty good. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen either one. But it's not necessary, because there was already the adaptation with Tim Curry, and I think Tim Curry is definitely a more charismatic Pennywise. I mean, he's charismatic in everything he's in Clue, you know, and Home Alone 2. Great Pennywise. I don't think that the new movies are necessary. I think maybe they do some things better than the original, and the original does some things better. I wouldn't say either version is more true to the book. I'd say they both have their flaws and things that they change too much, and I mean, I have yet to see a legitimate just retelling of the story frame by frame. Well, Stephen King does seem to have some kind of vulgar fascination. There's a lot of stuff in it that, I don't know, just kind of reveals some kind of neurosis with the guy. Last year I bought The Outsider, which is his newest book, and it's very good. He hasn't lost it, but there's this part where it talks about the golf club that one is supposed to urinate into, and I thought, well, that's kind of a reference out of nowhere. I think Stephen King kind of uses phallic imagery to sell books. I'm not one for that, but other than that, Pennywise is a fine book. I mean, there's not too much phallic stuff in there, but I don't know. It's just definitely not, you know. I mean, it's definitely some mature stuff that I can understand wouldn't be in either of the movie adaptations. Also, there's not a lot of clown stuff. Pennywise is a clown about half of the time, and the other half he's all this other stuff. And I mean, there's enough in the book of Pennywise to make it fun. And the book actually starts out right with the sewer scene, so you get right into the action. But keep in mind that it is a shapeshifter, and he's not really a clown, and there's not much of the clown version, although, you know, he does have balloons. Lots of balloons. There's lots of balloons in there. As for the setting, I like Derry, Maine. I think Stephen King's done a great job at creating fictional cities in Maine, all these crazy, non-existent locations. And let me see how much time I have remaining. Derry, Maine. I think it's a great idea. You know, and talks about Bangor a lot. Stephen King lives in Bangor, obviously. It talks about Haven, which is in a lot of his other stuff, and Castle Rock, you know, all these towns that don't really exist. That's always kind of confusing because there is a town here in Colorado called Castle Rock. I think if there's one thing Stephen King could work on just a bit, it's to create some more fictional locations in Colorado, because The Stand is set in Boulder, The Shining's set somewhere off Steamboat Springs-ish. Misery is set over the Continental Divide, I'm relatively sure, but I think it would be interesting to see what he could do with Colorado. You know, I think that really the only two locations he really explores are Maine and Colorado, which I think are two states that don't get enough attention. Although I guess in his new one, The Outsider, he explores Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, I guess Oklahoma doesn't get that much coverage. Texas certainly does. You know, but just very interesting locations. I like the idea of Derry, Maine. You know, just the fact that it's not a real town and, you know, whatnot. And you can look up an actual map of Stephen King's version of Maine with all the fictional towns and their relation to the real towns. And again, this is something odd. I've realized that there's kind of a thing that a lot of sci-fi and horror writers will do, where they'll create kind of a fictional town that a lot of their stories take place in, or heck, a bunch of fictional towns, and they'll set it in a real place. With Stephen King, obviously, it's Derry, Maine, it's Derry, Haven, and Castle Rock. With Ray Bradbury, it's Greentown, Illinois. I always liked the stories set in Greentown, Illinois, especially the one with the eccentric war colonel who creates the mummy hoax. That one's a lot of fun. And it goes all the way back to H.P. Lovecraft with Arkham, Massachusetts and the Miskatonic River. Arguably, it could even go all the way back to Edgar Allan Poe, but I mean, not really. There's not too many mentions of fictional locations in his stuff. But yeah, H.P. Lovecraft kind of started that. Arkham, Massachusetts. And Batman stole it and hasn't given him credit for Arkham. Then you've got Greentown, Illinois. Now, before I read it, like 5 years ago, I read Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. And let me tell you, if you haven't read it yet, you should, because you'll instantly notice that it's just like it. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say that Stephen King ripped off Ray Bradbury. I would say he had to have read it, because the similarities are there. I wouldn't suggest not reading both books. They're both amazing books. I'd call them, like, twin books. That's how good they both are. They're both amazing. It and Something Wicked This Way Comes amazing. The only trouble is it has gotten, like, 2 decent movie versions. Something Wicked hasn't even... It had 1 movie version, but it was bad. See, the thing about Stephen King is pretty blunt and lewd with his prose. He won't engage in metaphors that much. I mean, there's even a part with Bill Denbrough about how he doesn't use metaphors. I like that a lot, as I don't think metaphors are really worth using either. Very identifiable character there, Stephen. Bill Denbrough. Wow. I mean, I know he's supposed to be you, Stephen, but anyway. The point being, I think it's kind of impossible to really make a good, solid adaptation of Ray Bradbury's words, because he is so poetic. There's never been a complete adaptation of all the Martian Chronicles. That'd be difficult to do. Like I said, the movie version of Something Wicked was garbage. There's a Twilight Zone episode, which I'm going to cover in the worst 12s, because you just can't adapt them to film very well. I think the only time that anything of his was really adapted that well was in the Ray Bradbury Theater, in this episode with Jeff Goldblum. That one's amazing. Young Jeff Goldblum. It's really good. The Town Where No One Got Off, in case you've never seen it, which I doubt you have, but it's great. That's what I call the one good Ray Bradbury adaptation. But Something Wicked is absolutely the forefather of it. I mean, there's so much in common. Just so much. Greentown is exactly like Derry, Maine. I think if there was a Mr. Dark Pennywise crossover, that would be epic, because they're both very interesting villains. And Ray Bradbury says that when he was a kid, this circus worker named Mr. Mysterio gave him some kind of electric shock, and that kind of set him on the path to become a writer, and I can definitely see that in there. So much circus, so much fun. I think at the end of the day, what really bothers me about the new It adaptations is, are they really necessary? I also think that the problem with an adaptation of any book is you have to, you're admitting that you can't come up with your own idea. So for one, you need to adapt it faithfully. But if you adapt it too faithfully, then people just assume that since they've read the book, they don't need to watch the movie. And if you change too many things, the people who've read the book will be upset that you've changed too many things. And I think that's definitely the case with the remake, as from what I hear. I'm definitely not really up for seeing it. Even if it does have Bill Hader, I don't really care for anything. Because I think after the vivid descriptions that Stephen King offers, I don't think it would be any more impressive in movie form. What kind of bothers me is the Itsploitation of it all, It takes away all the symbolic meaning of Pennywise. What it does, basically, is it takes nostalgia and just strips it of all its innocence and lays this world bare. The 50s had as many problems as we do today. That's an interesting theme. And maybe Pennywise is just imaginary, or maybe, they're just imagining it. The idea is, which is really an amazing concept, is that Pennywise, all the evidence that he leaves, the blood, the corpses, they're only visible to the 7 kids who have irked him, and I think that's pretty genius. Also that, he's willing to put in the effort to nab them all 27 years later. Like, my gosh, that's a fun villain right there. I think it's very smart, the way that no one can see the blood, no one can see the giant cricket hopping out of the fortune cookie, that's scary stuff. It's very hard to see these horrible things and no one can identify with you, which is why the bond between the characters is pretty identifiable and whatnot. But the main problem for me is that I just don't think it can really be that much more amazing on film or anything. And I think I definitely want Tim Curry to play Pennywise. When Chapter 2 came out, I thought they were just making something out of nothing. But then I read the book and I realized, oh, they are grown-ups in the book, so it is based on something. But is it Chapter 2 really necessary? I would say it is. I would prefer just like it in one movie, or they could do it in 6 installments, one for each part. You've got, 6 phone calls, you got June of 58, July of 58, whatnot. I think, and the fact that the Tim Curry one is called a mini-series, come on, it's a movie. It's not mini, you can't call it a mini-series if there's 2 installments. That's very lame. I will always refer to it as a movie. But the thing is, Pennywise is a cool character. I think neither the Tim Curry version nor the newer one really are the best possible adaptation that the novel could get. I think the novel definitely, consider that I always thought Pennywise was supposed to be the bad guy from The Stand in the Dark Tower, who the gunslinger is chasing across. But, I think that's an interesting universe Stephen King's got set up there. You got the Crimson King, you got the Turtle, the Turtle is basically God, Pennywise is Satan. Everyone will say he's an alien, but for gosh sakes, he's a demon, whatnot, I think part of the appeal of Pennywise is how mysterious his origins are. Is his name really Robert Gray, or is he alien, or whatnot? Because we never really get answers in the book, even as to his full experience. We just get a little peeks inside his thoughts as they track him down. But I definitely think that as for the new It, you don't need to go see it. I bought the whole 1,000-page It book. It's huge. I'd suggest you also read Something Wicked This Way Comes. Amazing stuff. Amazing. And I can definitely see that Stephen King had to have read it. It's impossible that he didn't, because they're so similar. It and Ray Bradbury. They're so similar. It's just, it's so similar. Again, I'm not accusing Stephen King of ripping anything off. Pennywise, original character, great character. Alright, Nate. What else? Got it. I read it. I guess that's really all I have to say. I think Stephen King is a good author. Still has some great books in him. The Outsider's proof of that. I read the whole thing, cover to cover. Now I read it, cover to cover. No surprises here. I think, and everyone talks about how bad he is in Creepshow. I think he's great in Creepshow. Creepshow is the shine. And now there's the new series on Shudder, but I'm probably not going to pay for that. If anything, I'd just like to see Creepshow 2. Anywho, I'm going to end off this little Halloween scare fest with a recommendation. There's this crazy indie film from the 80s, Night Train to Terror, and it takes place on this train. There's these teenagers on the train, and they're having some rebellious rock and roll, and then in the cabin car, God and Satan are playing chess, and God's like, well, I like rock and roll. It is for the youth. And Satan's like, it's this anthology, 3 segments, all of them pretty gruesome, but it's a very campy, stupid film, Night Train to Terror. That's my Halloween recommendation. And with with that, I guess this about wraps it up for my review of it. I think it is a great book, or the whole book. I don't think the new movie does it justice. I think the Tim Curry version is the better of the two. I think it's Itsploitation, the way that everyone cares so much about Pennywise, because overall, I mean, it's just a fun novel. So anyway, that's it.